Hi, everybody. Good to see you. This on. I can project this okay. Hi, thank you guys so much for coming out here. I'm Niles Height. I'm president of the Cornell Democrats. Thank you all for making the trek out here because it was a journey in some, so come from faraway places. But thank you all for being here. No better place to be on a Wednesday night. I wanted to say that one of the things that I have learned over the past couple of years, being the president of a Democratic chapter, for you all as well, we represent the literal Democratic Party on our college campuses. And that has a lot of weight and that has a lot of power, especially with the current political state of the world. And so for me, one of the things that I've had to learn specifically is the fact that who we choose to platform, especially right now, is extremely, extremely important. And I remember specifically when he started to run, he had a bunch of like news outlets and people just asking him like, did you get permission from, we'll call them institutional Democrats? Did you get their permission? Did someone ask you to do this? And basically he said, no, my focus is to the people, not the party. My allegiance is to the people, not the party. And for me, I feel like even though like no is just a two-letter word, but for me, it reminded me like the power is ours. We give these people their seats and we can take it away if we want to. And it's really important to like be reminded of. And especially right now, we do not need more people capitulating to an authoritarian government. I do not want that. You do not want that. If you do want that, you're in the wrong place. Please leave now. This is not that. You do not want that. And so that's why I was really, really excited that we had the opportunity to endorse him in his race for governor. And if y'all haven't already, y'all should get on it. Do it before the train leaves the station. You need to do it right now. It's really, really important. And yeah, and more importantly, I think just aside from having a heart for people, of course, I think this man's resume is just extensive. Former congressman, husband, father, former rapper too. Check him out on Spotify. 80 The Voice, really, really good rap. That was my favorite song. Love you, bro. Yeah, and hopefully with your help, we can add governor to that list. So if you would all give me a hand in welcoming Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado.
How y'all doing? How we doing? Niles, thank you so much for your leadership and your commitment to engagement. I want to thank all of you here, all of our young people who have traveled all across from New York to be here, to engage in this conversation, to engage in democracy. You know, when I was growing up in Schenectady, all right, my man, I had big dreams. I dreamed a lot about what was possible. My parents had big dreams. We were working class, tough neighborhoods, small apartments, cut coupons, clothes on layaway, appliances. But there was a hope inside of our household. There was a hope that life could be better for me and my little brother. And my parents worked for General Electric, big anchor employer in upstate. And over time, they would move from one apartment to the next, safer neighborhood. And I literally watched them work us up into the middle class. My freshman year in high school, we bought our first brand new house. I remember how important education was, and being a latchkey kid and coming home and doing my homework and leaving it on the counter, and how much my parents impressed upon me to go get it. You can get it. Nothing's promised, but you got a better than 50-50 chance. A lot's changed since then. A lot. A lot has changed. And I'll tell you, I think it's bigger than Trump. A lot bigger. In fact, I would argue that it's what made Trump possible. It's what made Trump possible. Because right now, we are living in a time where that story of upward mobility that I live, that story of the middle class growing, we're moving in the opposite direction. The middle class is actually shrinking. The fastest growing class of folks are the working poor. Two words that shouldn't go together. The working poor. And right here in New York, 2 out of 5 households across the state can't afford basic necessities, can't afford groceries, can't afford energy bills, can't afford rent, can't afford healthcare, can't afford childcare, transportation, can't afford life. 1 out of 4 New Yorkers, 1 out of 5 children in the state of New York are growing up in poverty, and half those kids in deep poverty in New York. Now, what's interesting about that is, meanwhile, we had the 3rd largest economy of any state in the country. The 3rd. And if we were an independent nation, the 9th largest economy in the world. Yeah. So it begs the question, where the hell is the money going? Who's it getting to? Well, on that point, we have the largest wealth inequality gap of any state right here in New York. The largest wealth inequality gap of any state. 9 other states have larger or higher corporate tax rates than New York. So we are reinforcing economic inequality right here. Folks can't afford anything. They're being squeezed out of the state they love, being forced to leave and find opportunities elsewhere. And as I travel across the state, downstate, upstate, North Country, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, the Hudson Valley, everywhere I go, people are hungry for more. They want more, and they deserve more. And they're demanding more. We just saw it. We just saw it with the New York City mayor's race. We just saw a city say enough is enough and get behind young voters, like all of you in here, first-time voters, said enough is enough. We're gonna back Zohran Mamdani. We're gonna back somebody who has the audacity to say, if you live in New York, you should be able to afford it. The audacity. The audacity to say to the establishment, you're not doing enough. You're clinging to power at the people's expense. The audacity to push up against all of that money and entrenched economic and political power. And I want to be clear about something. The governor of New York is a part of that establishment. Make no mistake about it. She waited 3 months after Zohran's convincing win in the primary to endorse. And now, 3 months after the fact, when we know that taxing the rich is a part of his agenda to push forward an agenda to make life more affordable for New Yorkers, the governor won't tax the rich. In fact, just recently, a group of folks just like you said to the governor, yelled to the governor, tax the rich, tax the rich. Her response, the more you tell me to do something, the more likely I'm not to do it. That's a real public servant for you, huh? I thought it was the other way around. The more the people want you to do something, you have an obligation as a public servant to hear them out and do it. She already said she doesn't want to do free buses. So we got no tax to rich or the ultra wealthy or corporations or billionaires. None of that. We got no free buses. What we do have is a 3-month late endorsement, and we have a photo op eating buffalo wings. See, this is the difference between myself and the governor, and this is what's similar about the governor and Stefanik. Both are obstacles to progress. Both are not trying to transform a system designed to set people back. We have an opportunity in this moment to press forward. We have an opportunity in this moment to transform a broken system. It is an opportunity for a new era. Think about the fact that when we have individuals who want to cling to power for as long as they can at the expense of the people, you have the power. You, just like you did in the city, to change that outcome, to build on that energy, to push forward an agenda that is truly for the people, for everybody. We have that moment right now. What we need are leaders who are really about the business of the people. What we need are leaders who care about the people. What we need are leaders who have a vision for the future, a vision that centers people at the center of government, not corporate power at the center of government. We need folks with a vision, an actual vision, not tied to profit, not tied to party, not tied to power, but to purpose and to the people. I have that vision. I have that vision, and it starts with taxing the rich and making sure that billionaires and big corporations pay their fair share, to make sure that everybody in New York can live in an affordable New York. Yes, it starts with a real housing plan that isn't about just giving tax credits to private developers and hoping they build affordable housing, but actually a full-scale housing plan that protects tenants, that actually empowers our mom and pop landlords, that builds truly affordable housing for everyone. Truly affordable housing. You know, listen, I know I'm talking to young people here, and I think about the fact that in 2025, the average age of a first-time home buyer is 40. Yeah, 40. In 2008, the average age of a first-time home buyer was 28. You're being priced out of the dream. You're being priced out of opportunity. And we don't have to stand for that. A real robust plan that invests in truly affordable housing that isn't tied to just making sure we get rich private developers is how we move past the current broken status quo. And what about healthcare? People are going bankrupt over a system that is designed to extract profit at your expense. We're not paying for healthcare, by the way. We're paying for insurance. We're paying to be exploited by the insurance companies. We have an opportunity for universal, single-payer healthcare right here in New York. No premiums. No premiums. I want to be clear about this. No premiums, no deductibles, no copays. Yes to dental, yes to vision, yes to long-term care. Comprehensive care for everybody. The New York Health Act, it'll get us there. And I support the New York Health Act. We will be that state that gets us to single-payer universal health care. How many folks in here know about the fact that we have a trillionaire in our midst now? Yeah, a trillionaire. When I was a kid, I never thought about trillionaires being a real thing. Apparently they are. Meanwhile, the minimum wage, $16.50. Absolutely zero purchasing power. Minimum wage, $16.50. It's sad. And we can move past this. We can have a living wage, not a minimum wage, a living wage for all. And what does that mean? $30 by the year 2030. I'll say it again, $30 by the year 2030. This is how we actually close the economic gap that is leaving communities behind. This is how we make sure that folks can afford housing, can afford childcare, can afford the things that are literally bankrupting them now as we speak. So whether it's truly affordable housing, universal single-payer health care, or a living wage for all, we can do these things and literally transform lives. I'll say it again. Truly affordable housing, universal single-payer health care, a living wage for all. These things need not be impossible. They are obtainable if we actually go get it and fight for it. But guess what? There's more than that. What about the fact that when I was growing up, education was supposed to be the great equalizer, the gateway to opportunity? I don't really sense that as much. A lot of inequities across our educational system. In part, we don't have statewide pre-K here in New York. We ought to. We should be investing in early childhood development and make sure that our children have a pathway. We should be investing in universal childcare to make sure that our young people have before and after school programming and wraparound services, to make sure that our parents, and I'm a parent, a dad of twins, 12 years old, aren't saddled with the cost every single day. And if we're going to talk about our future, if we're going to talk about what it means to invest in a better future, we have to keep battling the climate crisis. We can't abandon this fight. The extreme weather events, the flooding, it's not going to stop. And the energy costs are only going to go up for folks. We have the boldest climate legislation in the country right here in New York, the CLCPA. But we have a governor who's literally going to court to not have to enforce those goals in the face of a president who wants to jam fossil fuel and frack gas down our throats. Just recently, the governor capitulated and fast-tracked a water quality permit that allowed the Nessie pipeline through our state. A pipeline that has been denied 3 times over because of the failed water quality permits that prevented it in the first place. So what changed? Politics. That changed. We need bold investment in renewable energy, and solar, and wind, and geothermal. Cheap sources of energy that create good paying jobs and will drive the cost of energy down, not up. Now, I've said a lot, covered a lot of ground. Some folks, including the governor, might say this is not possible. It's too much. I disagree. It's not impossible. New York is the land of anything is possible. New York is not afraid of the impossible. What we're built for in this moment is to lead. We know what's going on in Washington. We know the cuts that are happening. We understand the moral bankruptcy coming out of the White House. But we have a rich history here in New York, a rich history of making the impossible possible. They once said that Medicare was impossible. It was impossible. They once said civil rights reform was impossible. Social Security was impossible. All of it impossible. And now it is possible. Now it's here. In New York, we've made this happen time and time again. From the suffrage movement to the founding of the NAACP, to the labor movement, the disability movement, the immigrant rights movement. How many movements do we have to show and tell to make it clear we have a long track record of making the impossible possible? This is our moment to dream again. This is our moment to believe again. There is a new era upon us. We do have the opportunity to build. What we have done in the city here with Mamdani's win is make it possible for, with a willing partner, to usher in a new day, to usher in a new energy, to seize the moment. This does not happen often, what's about to happen. This moment is not a moment that we could just expect to keep coming. You've begun this moment. The people have begun to make this moment. And I'm telling you, it's everywhere across the state. All we have to do is keep building. All we have to do is keep pushing and keep believing that we can do the impossible. So let me say, going back to that little boy in Schenectady who dreamed and thought about what was possible. That little boy is still inside of me. And I hope that that inner child is still inside of you. I know it is. Don't let the cynicism, don't let the hate, don't let the division, the cruelty, the ugliness, the nastiness ever snatch away that power that's inside of you, that agency that's inside of you, that love that is inside of you. That is how change happens. And that is how we'll make change here in New York, where anything is possible, including a governor that puts people at the center of government and not corporations. The powerful and the wealthy and the well-connected, they have their champion. I'm running for governor to be yours. I want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate you. It means a lot. It means an awful lot. I know we're going to bring up some folks now to have a conversation. Where's it coming from? Over here? Do we have chairs? Because this is a town hall. So we're going to have some, I want to ask you guys some questions and hear directly from you. How we sit? You have enough chairs? Here, you want to sit here? First of all, I want to say, I know I spent some time earlier with a number of you grabbing some pizza and hanging out. And it was very, very encouraging, the thoughtfulness that you all brought to bear. It means a lot that you all took the time to come here because you're young and you could be cynical, you could be dismissive of the whole thing, but you're not. You're actually leaning in at a time where it's been made very difficult for you to keep believing. So I want to thank you all for being here. I have some questions that I'd like to ask this group. And while I get ready, if you just want to introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Peter Hinkle. I'm the co-president of Hamilton Democrats at Hamilton College in Clinton, but near Utica, New York, so very central.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deary Oliver. I am Vice President of College Democrats at Syracuse University, and I am a sophomore.
All right.
Hi, my name is Desiree Rigo. I'm the co-president of the Colgate Democrats. We're in Hamilton, New York, which is as central as you could possibly get.
Hi, I'm Stephen Austin. I'm the political director for the College Democrats of New York, and I'm the president of the St. Lawrence University Democrats.
Let's give it up. I'm gonna first say go Gate, because you know, Colgate is in the house. So let me ask you, I think there's a lot of energy right now. There's a lot of political engagement that I do sense happening on college campuses. But I would like to know from all of you, what do you think has worked to create that energy? And if you feel like there have been obstacles to that or things that have made it difficult from your vantage point to stay engaged or to get more and more young people engaged, you know, what could be done both at the state level to help facilitate that and just, you know, at the campus level?
For what's worked, I think even going to before all of the success we've seen with Mamdani and other candidates and just that influence, people really wanted to get out and actually oppose what was going on. One of the first things we did is we held a Pride March to support, you know, the gay community on our campus that is so demonized and vilified by the administration. So just getting people out, getting people to know like there's people around who support you and there's folks that are willing to come out and just bat for you. and we can all be upset together, and we're going to resist it. I think that's so critically important. And just for things that, we can see at the state level, leadership. So many of us look to our elected officials and the higher party leaders as figures to direct us. What do you want us to do for the government, for the people we get in there? And there hasn't been any of that leadership. So we'll go to bat for you, but bat for us,
Yeah, I can. I definitely can say what has greatly improved, and I know this definitely contributed to Zoran's win, was targeting the youth, particularly with social media and relating to us. I, for one, definitely reposted a lot of memes that also meant I was like, you know what, I should go canvas because this is someone who not only I can relate to, but I can see myself in, and see someone who's willing to speak out against large corporations or entities and governments who wants to silence youth voices. And as a result, it has mobilized a lot of us greatly. We're allowed us to relate to our fellow peers and educate them as well. However, one thing I want to be transparent and say what we do need to work on is targeting diversity and seeing more spaces where POC youth can be involved in politics. I, for one, that is a struggle, at least on my campus, if I had to be honest, was diversity in the organization where I spoke to Black students and they felt as if their voices weren't going to be heard. Even if it's a political space, will my concerns be taken seriously? Will my voice be shut down? And so as a result, there unfortunately is not a lot of people who look like me who are willing to step into political organizations out of fear if they'll be respected or heard as well. So that also starts with meeting us where we're at and understanding us as well and listening to our concerns too.
Well said.
Yeah, so I think with this energy that we have right now, we'll see, at least on my campus, and I've seen it around as well, is that a lot of people, once they're engaged, once they have this energy, is they kind of don't know where to direct it. And, with your renewed vision for a New York State Democratic Party, part of that is, year-round, I don't want to say 24/7, constant organization through the New York State Democratic Party, and having the opportunity to engage these students in a way where they actually, know what to do, especially in these off years like right now when we are running major campaigns in New York City and across the state, even these local races, is that students kind of didn't know where to go. So at least I go to a very small college, and having students who are excited to be involved often still means they're not going to be involved because they don't have someone telling them, here's a door list, go knock it. Here's a phone list, go call it. And having those directives from some central or organized leadership who has the resources to do that would be fantastic.
So that's a great point. Oh, go ahead. You want to? Yeah.
Sorry. No, just to chime in, I think the most important things that I've seen on the ground are, at least from our local politicians, we've had a lot of this. We've been very collaborative with the Madison County Democrats. It's transparency with us about things that are happening, constant feedback loop. It's the strength in their convictions and not just, pushing away and floundering in the face of adversity, and rather stepping into that and using the energy from the students to propel forward towards policies that tangibly help us. And then I also think it's just meeting us where we are. I mean, just by coming into our communities and reaching out to us and making contact with us, we've formed a relationship with our local politicians and with our local advocacy groups. And when people meet us where we are, I feel like there's a lot more energy because we feel included in the process and also feel as though we're being listened to and that our needs are actually going to be taken care of.
Those are all great points. And I think on the party reform piece, that was alluded to, one of the things that I think have a real issue with at the state party level is it's very top down, and it's very conventional in terms of how it operates. And it's become more of an instrument for the governor's seat than an organization that is meant to grow power from the ground up. And that means reaching young people where they are. That means reaching rural communities. That means reaching communities of color directly and not taking them for granted when it's just the time to do so. That it means year-round investment, whether it's brick and mortar offices, whether it's actually having personnel that shares information. These are all critical pieces that I've laid out and we've laid out in a whole new reform agenda that fully brings in our young people and brings in communities that are often marginalized or only looked to at the last second. And I think we have to really shift our mindset in that regard. So I appreciate you all for for making those observations. All right, next question. In the New York City mayor race, we saw Mamdani motivate young voters in a way that is changing the political landscape in the city and across the state, in part by staying laser focused on the message of affordability. What issues are truly moving students on your campus right now, and why do you think those issues are resonating? How are you seeing that show up in conversations, organizing, and everyday campus life?
One of the unfortunate issues lately on my campus had to do with discrimination, unfortunately, between Black Student Union and another political party on campus, resulting in a Substack article written by I believe a graduate teacher assistant, where they joked about sending us back to our country and that they compared us to segregation in the Little Rock Nine as well. And as a result, this is just one of the many issues that have came up. And unfortunately, I relate that to the environment that the administration has fostered to allow that to occur. And that has mobilized many BIPOC students on campus. But we also wanted to make sure we reached out to non-BIPOC students because we do need that support from everyone. But it really did demonstrate that we are willing to fight and we do want our voices heard. But one of the biggest issues is being truly understood by the university. And we pointed out how sometimes it felt as if other communities were able to be recognized for unacceptable racism that has happened towards them. But when it came to particularly Black students, we questioned, it came into question whether or not we experienced racism, if it was just a microaggression. Does this have anything to do with race in the first place? When, at least my personal opinion, it certainly did. And so as a result, especially with College Democrats at Syracuse University, reaching out to my fellow peers to know that they're heard and listened to and seen and affirmed, because that's what we need the most, to know that not only political organizations, but students on campus know that they are affirmed in the feelings they experience on campus as well. And so that has been something that mobilized us, especially with cuts to DEI, alongside certain offices being closed down on our campus too. It had created this feeling of alienation, particularly because we had a protest on campus, I believe in 2020, around that time, called Not Again SU, due to racism and racial slurs written on campus, which led to a mass protest and led to locations such as the Barnum McDuffie House for BIPOC students, and allowing us to feel safe on campus. And by actively undoing those issues and telling us to stay silent on certain matters, saying that certain organizations had to remove, say, BIPOC in front of their name, it created this sense of you're only doing it for show and to show that you actually, quote unquote, care, but in reality, you want to appeal to someone else. And as right now, with the administration and their attempts to silence our voices and tell us whether or not we're worthy of opportunities, it only goes to show that we're concerned that we're just going to fall back into this category of not being allowed to be listened to, which has driven a lot of us to mobilize and get together and know that we'll feel seen on campus.
If I had to speak to issues on our campus, I mean, affordability is a massive one right now, especially since our college is in the poorest county in New York, St. Lawrence. It's cuts by the federal government to programs that are cutting down on people's, aid and tuition. It's brutal for some people. It's a matter of where am I going to go, or can I stay here, can I not? We also have a huge population at our school that's our international students, and now they have to worry about anything they say, anything they do, because somebody could just snatch them. Like that's not the America I know. But we also had just nearby us in a local high school, a kid got grabbed by ICE agents, and luckily a bunch of people went out and they had to release him. But it's a scary time when a Homeland Security car goes by and people have to be worried about that. Go ahead.
I guess just some context on Colgate. We're also very, very rural, isolated community. We're also a school that has a lot of international students as well. And some of the issues that I've seen affecting students is, number one, our sheriff has a contract with ICE right now. So there's a really large fear about just, existing if you are, out in town, and what that means for you as an international student or as a person of color. There's also a lot of concerns about environmental issues, with the understanding that we have a lot of farmers around and people get their food from these sorts of things. And with climate change rapidly on the rise, that is also something that really concerns our students. And then lastly, because of our isolation, just transportation in general is something that's completely inaccessible for us. I mean, it's an hour and a half to our nearest trauma center if we needed that form of healthcare, and there's really no public transportation, no infrastructure to make that accessible. Our roads ice over, and then you're kind of stuck. And it causes a lot of issues for our students on the ground, and those things are proximate to them, so they really care.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really want to echo this point of affordability. I know it's central to what we've been looking at this election cycle especially, but it's still true and it's going to continue to be true. People on my campus are concerned about it, but I think more broadly, students, especially on my campus, are concerned with this broad issue of these vulnerable populations. Right now, under Trump, it's unfortunately prolific, the number of groups that are so vulnerable right now. And like you said, Lieutenant Governor, it didn't start with Trump, but certainly it's exacerbated by him. So right now we're in a really precarious position where groups, whether that's immigrants or foreigners or transgender or gay or POC or whoever it might be, these people are at risk in one way or another, and we're looking for some way to protect them. And I think that energizes people a lot to know that they might have the opportunity to protect these people, to have a governor that will protect these people. So,
Well, let me say, first of all, because in listening to you all speak, I realized that I don't think I spoke about the ugliness and the cruelty of Trump's immigration policy. And I want to be clear about that. We can't tolerate it here in New York. And that goes well beyond a tweet. We have legislation here in New York called the New York for All Act, New York for All. The New York for All Act would ban local cooperation with ICE. I've called for a special session as Lieutenant Governor of New York to go back to Albany, the state Senate, state assembly, so that we can sign New York for All and do so now. We don't have time to wait. It is a crisis. And there are literally young people and parents and families all across our state, from upstate, in the farming community, the ag community, on our college campuses, folks who've been here for decades, raised their children here, our friends, our neighbors, our brothers, our sisters, and they're living under terror. And if we can't pass legislation here in New York to protect our immigrant community, like New York for All, where can we? So I just want to reiterate, and I appreciate you flagging that, because I do think it's another point of real contrast between the current approach to immigration here in New York and what we would be doing if I was governor right now in New York. The other piece that I want to speak to is the overall point about vulnerability across race, the LGBTQ plus trans community, like the way in which Trump's mode of leadership is putting everybody in a bullseye for ridicule and demagoguery. It is sinister. And I want to explain to you how it attaches to the question of affordability and how these two things are actually related. Because everybody is catching economic hell. No matter your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your religion. My old congressional seat in upstate, 90% white, the 8th most rural congressional seat in the country, a seat that Trump won by 7 points 2 years prior to me winning it and flipping it in 2018. A lot of those folks white, poor, rural communities being left behind. No broadband, no cell service, no opportunities. When COVID hit, you had to go in a McDonald's parking lot just to do your homework because you couldn't do it at home. In upstate, 21st century, New York. We cannot let the differences on the surface be leveraged against us to miss the shared economic exploitation that's being caused all across our state and all across our country. It's an old divide and conquer strategy that plays on tribalism. We have an opportunity in this moment with the right kind of leadership here in New York and across the country, I'd argue, to inject a different kind of energy that isn't so destructive and so divisive and so dehumanizing, which is what Trump is doing. He's dehumanizing us. He's making us not see our shared humanity anymore. He's making us lose compassion for one another. As long as it's not on my doorstep, I'm okay. And we have to push back against that, and it's up to young people, I have to say, to never let go of that and the demand that we do not retreat when it comes to that fight. So I'd appreciate you all raising those very, very important issues. I think we got one more question. Are we good on time? Yes. A little faster? All right, New York is experiencing a generational handoff in leadership, and campuses are often the first place where those shifts take shape. As state politics continue to move left and new leaders emerge, how do you see your campuses evolving? What direction do you think student energy is moving in, and what does that mean for the future of democratic politics in New York?
Yeah, I'd love to start on this one. I just hate to say it, but the reality is we still live, or we're even more, I would say, live in a time where the national political stage is the focus above anything else, and frankly, the only focus. When I was running my chapter of the Democrats last year, we had so many people phone banking, door knocking, because they knew that there was a Democratic presidential candidate. This year, we had a handful of people, and that difference, that disparity is not just present at Hamilton, it's present across the board, and not just at the college level. But what this means is, in a way, we need to invoke the kind of this spirit, this authority of the national stage, that energy that comes with these presidential years that we, like, I honestly, I don't quite know what it looks like, but in these presidential years, we all know we have significantly higher turnout, and whatever it is that's making that happen is what we need to do in these years when you're running, and in every other year, every 3 years that isn't the fourth presidential year. So
No, I agree with that push as well. And I also think Colgate has historically been a generally apolitical campus. And it was at the point where our college political chapters had both basically been completely abandoned. But I think it just takes one person, two person, a small group of people who care enough and who aren't afraid to vocalize that they are concerned for other people to jump on the bandwagon in that regard. Just takes a couple people coming to the forefront, telling the administration, hey, this is what we care about, or inviting a speaker to campus, or just renting out a room for a discussion forum. And I think that that's the future of the Democratic Party, is just a few people who care enough garnering some support. And that sort of effect of, once one person shows that they care, the next person will jump on. I think it is what you were saying. It needs to be more bottom up than top down, and understanding that this sort of grassroots organization is important and this youth mobilization is important, and that with that we could continue to propel the party forward in favor of these more progressive policies and these things that will tangibly help us. I mean, I know also, as someone who's lived in New York my entire life, I would love to, in the future, continue to. I would love this to be a New York that I've always recognized, and one that I could afford to raise my kids in. And I think just that in and of itself is enough to motivate me and enough to motivate many of my peers to continue the work we've been doing on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just to echo a lot of these points too, it really is just a matter of, I don't think it really matters right now if you're fully like believing in democratic socialist ideas or further left ideas. Everybody can kind of agree on some things right now. I want money in my pockets. I want to feel safe in my country, and I don't want the rich to be running my country. I think some things to look at here is like up in our campus, we're in the heart of Elise Stefanik's district. We used to have, I know, we used to have a slew of conservatives. They don't exist anymore. We're thriving. We're good. You got 1,200 people coming out to No Kings in rural upstate New York. When do you ever think you'd see that? So, I mean, that's the future at the end of the day is candidates who want to work for the people, and then the people want to come out for the candidates, and to just be able to live in my state.
Well said.
Everyone took the words right out of my mouth, but another approach I want to take is, if I had to put it quite bluntly, we are fed up, but particularly we are fed up with people not taking a stance and wanting to step back. Like, no, I don't want to say this. What if it's like absolutely not? And one thing I can say is, like, in Syracuse, we now have Mayor-elect Sharon Owens. She won in a complete landslide, and one thing I can definitely say is she came to our school, she advocated, she listened to us, she participated in multiple forums, she was out in the community. She said not only things that we quote unquote wanted to hear, but she would stick to, and she was not afraid to speak up. And that is not only what we needed in Syracuse, but across the nation as youth. We want to know that these people are willing to take a challenge and stand against like the elite government, especially politicians who are threatening our rights on a daily. And I noticed that is typically the people who we elect, especially Zoran as well. He was out in the community. He was not afraid to speak his mind, and that's what the youth want. We don't want someone who's afraid to teeter that line or want to step back out of fear of ruffling any feathers. And I or notice, like, that's one thing with the Democratic Party, where oftentimes we're afraid to take that stance and say, no, this is what we want for the people. And so as a result, a lot of us are electing those who are willing to take that stance and change that political landscape for the Democrat Party, resulting in many youth wanting that as well. And I noticed that on my campus too, where not even just with politics, but even down to the administration, be transparent with us, be honest with us. We want someone who's not afraid to stand in the front lines for us. We don't want someone who don't want to speak out in fear of getting someone else upset. That upset will allow us to need the rights we need and the resources we can have to access higher education and affordable housing, as well as affordable SNAP and resources as well.
Well said, well said, well said. Let me say this. What you just articulated, all of you just articulated in many respects is, what I hear is you want people to be in leadership that are moved by the courage of their convictions. You want people who are decisive, who are accessible, who are transparent. And I'll say this, since I've been in politics, as somebody who got involved late in life and had a career before I became an elected official. I have been a lawyer in the corporate law firm setting for 7 years. Before that, I was a hip hop artist for 5 years. Thank you, sir. AD, the voice, if you're wondering. But I got into politics so late that I didn't understand all the different ways that the machine works from the inside. But one of the things you put your finger on is how once you get inside of politics, it becomes a game of how you keep power. That's what happens. You get inside and you realize, ooh, I made it. I made it inside the club. How do I stay inside the club? And the club has certain people of significant means that say, well, we'll help you stay in the club. Don't worry, you can stick around. Just make sure you do X, Y, and Z, like don't tax the, things like that. And, we'll make sure you're okay. We'll make sure your campaign coffers have what they need and you can keep your power. And if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a moral compass, if you don't have a desire to want to actually do something with that power, it is very hard to resist that. And you start to waffle. You start to try to read the political winds and do whatever you can to just skate by, to not hit any landmines, because you don't have to. You have folks who will protect you. And you literally do a disservice to the very people who gave you the power in the first place. It's the ultimate betrayal. it really is the ultimate betrayal. The people give you power, their power, to help them. You take it, and that power corrupts you at their expense, at your expense. And I think what folks are feeling, irrespective of party line, is that reality, that there's this corruption that's happening that we've got to stop if we want democracy to actually seem and feel legitimate again. So let's give a hand for these amazing young people, these students up here. Really appreciate you all. Thank you for coming up. Are they going back to their seats now, or one little picture? Should we stand up or sit down? Okay. All right, standing up. One more time. All right.
Good evening. Good evening.
Some Q&A. All right.
Can we give a round of applause for the panel again? Hi everyone, my name is Ebube Weme. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications with the NYC Youth Agenda. It's great to hear you speak this evening, Antonio. I actually heard you speak sometime in the summer behind Brooklyn at the Salem Baptist Church, so it's good to hear you again. At the Youth Agenda, we have specific issues surrounding mental health, economic mobility, environmental justice for young people, educational equity. And, hearing you speak this evening was very motivating, but I just want to ask, here in New York City, apart from governor, you control the whole state, you have, charge over that. But in New York City, we have our own specific issues, right? Including mental health issues surrounding young people. So my question to you is, how do you plan to address New York City specific issues? And also, how does that relate in the state in general?
Well, first of all, I would say I'm excited to work in partnership with the mayor-elect, Mamdani, on the issue of mental health. It is a crisis that certainly is acute in the city, but I know very well that it is acute all throughout the state. And particularly with our young people. I was talking earlier today with some of you about the challenges of being exposed to so much information all at one time. When I was growing up, I was sheltered in what I could see and not see. And that's a gift and a curse, right? Because it maintains your innocence, but it also, leaves you sort of unaware of what's going on in the world. You all are growing up at a time where things are coming at you fast all the time, nonstop, and it could be relentless. And it's all right in front of you, or it's all in your pocket. No matter where you go, it's always with you 24/7. And I can see how there's a mental strain that could just inevitably take part, not to mention what happened with COVID and the loneliness epidemic. So we have to figure out how to really bone up the mental health care workforce and make sure that they have a strong presence in those schooling institutions and educational institutions, starting from K through 12, and of course on our college campuses. We also have to make sure that when we talk about housing, we're talking about housing that speaks to that issue, so that we're not criminalizing mental health. We have a lot of folks who are unfortunately locked up, absolutely, with mental illness, and you can't treat mental illness with incarceration or with criminalization. So we have to have more mental courts, right, and push our whole criminal justice system in a fashion that's more holistic and doesn't treat everything through a punitive lens. So it's both the wraparound services, the pretrial services, and the criminal justice space. It's making sure we have actual healthcare, mental care providers on school campuses and in high schools early on. And it's making sure that we're putting money in those communities where the people who are doing that work in a real way are actually getting it, not just the folks who happen to know somebody inside of government.
Thank you so much. I know we have a lot of questions, but I just
Yes, we
wanted
do.
to add that, again, with the NYC Youth Agenda, I'm hoping, with your team, we're able to look at it and find ways that it could partner with your campaign as well. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, sir.
Hello, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
My name is Corey, and my question is, I turned 18 just after the presidential election. So for the first 4 years of my adult life, I am completely unrepresented in the government. What are your thoughts on potentially lowering the voting age? I've heard a lot about that online. Some say 17, some say 16, like in many countries, Brazil, for example. And I've even heard as low as 14 out there. What are your thoughts on that generally?
I think it's perfectly fine to lower, certainly to 16. I think that the more we can get more people involved in our democracy, whether that's making sure that folks who are younger can actually access the ballot box, or whether that's making it easier to vote across the board. So right now, we don't treat Election Day, for example, like a holiday. It's a work day. So folks have to work 2 or 3 jobs sometimes, or stretched. They can't take that time off. Make it a holiday. Make it a paid holiday so that everybody can actually show up and appreciate that we do have this right to vote. It is something that is sacred to our democracy, and we should lift it up. We should celebrate it. So I'm a big believer, especially with all the money in politics, and it's going to be a long time, unfortunately, but we will get it done, where we have to get the unlimited amounts of money in our system because of Citizens United out of our system. There's so much of an imbalance where corporations are being treated like people that we have to do everything we can to empower actual people, as many people, to vote. And so whether it's lowering the age, whether it's making sure we have a holiday for Election Day, whether it's treating college campuses as spaces to register folks to vote like a DMV, do all of that across the state and across the country, and make sure that we actually make it very easy for folks to vote.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hi, so I'm Noah. I was heavily invested in the Zoran for mayor race. I canvassed for him quite a few times. One of the things I really liked about his campaign was his emphasis on affordability and also public transportation. I don't drive. I'm from Long Island. It's really impossible to get around places on Long Island. What are your plans for infrastructure and public transportation around the state?
Well, first of all, I welcome the opportunity again to build off of an agenda that puts free public transportation at the center. Especially when you think about how folks move around here in the city. It is vitally important. It takes a commitment in Albany, right, to be able to do that work, to work with the MTA, to unlock the resources that we're going to need to make that happen. I'm willing to make that commitment because I understand how important it is to make it not only affordable, but accessible. Accessible. I didn't speak about this in my remarks as well, but I want to know whether it's in the housing space, whether it's in the transportation space, when we talk about affordability, and I have my disability community in mind, we have to talk about accessibility as well. And that to me is very, very important when we think about transportation and we think about housing. So I'm very excited, whether it's with the free buses plan or whether it's with just addressing the high cost of housing across the table in the city and across the state. Everything does boil down to people being priced out of the city and being priced out of the state. And I'm committed to work with Zoran to achieve those outcomes that are going to be beneficial to everybody. Thank you, man.
Hi, Lieutenant Governor. I'm Abby Burkowski. I am the
Hello.
chair of Democracy Matters at Sarah Lawrence College. At Sarah Lawrence specifically, the Trump administration has fired back wanting names of students engaged in political organizations, looking at social media, wanting students expelled, taking away scholarships, etc. I was wondering what you would do as governor to counter the prohibition of political activity on campuses, especially when the term political is so broadly interpreted.
We can't succumb to that. We cannot succumb to the chilling of speech. You know, we have the Bill of Rights for a reason, and the First Amendment is the first for a reason. You know, it protects minority voices. It protects dissent. It protects the ability for us to avoid the tyranny of the majority, right? It allows for real change to always be possible. when you start chilling speech, when you start controlling who can say what and how it can be said, you are basically limiting the possibility for truth to get out. And just because you might believe that that is not your truth or what you think is accurate doesn't give you the right to shut it down. Not in a free society, not in a society that is dedicated to an open dialogue, an open pursuit of truth. And as a governor, I would certainly do everything I can to enable that, to promote that, and to make sure that when you're a student on campus, you have the room to engage in healthy conversations, nonviolent conversations, conversations that are filled with grace and with mercy, discussions that are filled with a willingness to seek mutual understanding, and oftentimes reckon with folks' ignorance on the issue. And the other point that I want to make about that is what I see a lot in the way we communicate in today's climate, unfortunately, and I think it's a product of social media, there is a level of dogmatism across the table. People are very quick to cancel or shut down or say something you shouldn't say. It's a very black and white, but life is complex and human beings are complex. We are all byproducts of very complex upbringings. And so it's important for us to create space for all of that complexity and to make sure that we're allowing ourselves to have real conversations. But you can't do that if you're shutting down one side of the equation. You always got to keep it open, but do so in a way, like I said, that is about mutual respect and a commitment to finding some kind of commonality.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Sam Tepperman. I'm from SUNY New Paltz, and I'm with the group Democracy Matters. I'm a student leader.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. My question, our university president's main goal this year has been to balance the budget. We've been overspending for years, and it's not been the goal to improve our education. That's been decreasing. It's not been to defend against attacks on education from the federal government. It's not been to support students who are having things like SNAP cut. It is just to balance the budget and cut programs. And my question for you is, when students are already so under attack, what will you do as governor to allow, especially public schools that are suffering the most from this, to be able to fund programs that students really need right now when funding has been so cut?
And it's a great point. You know, the president is, gutting the Department of Education, which is going to have a massive effect on, how public institutions, particularly of higher ed, but, support our students, whether it's through Pell Grants or low interest, loans or loan forgiveness. Like all of these things are going to come under siege because of what's going on at the federal level. And it's incumbent upon states, particularly like New York, which is enriched and has the most billionaires among the most millionaires. We have a responsibility to make the most of what we have here to sustain ourselves and invest directly in our public institutions to ensure that while we can't fill every single gap that is being created, whether it's in Medicaid, whether it's in SNAP, whether it's in education, that is coming out of the federal government, we do have a responsibility to try to figure out how to mitigate that harm and figure out where to prioritize places like our public institutions, which are really critical for enriching our young people's lives and providing meaningful opportunities. So I would definitely look very closely at the way we would leverage our resources and where we could raise revenue to help offset some of the harm that has been coming and will continue to come to our public school system. So that would be a very big focus of mine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Ava Maleta, and I'm also with Democracy Matters at SUNY New Paltz. And SUNY New Paltz has been a pretty progressive school, very politically engaged students. And then about a year and a half ago, there was a peaceful encampment, and that resulted in a significant amount of violent arrests. And since then, I've seen a decrease in political engagement, political activism. And I know that students are afraid to exercise their right to protest. And I want to know what you would do to make the students feel safe because I know a lot blamed the state, blamed a lot of the arrests, and blamed a lot of the violence on what was going on up at Albany. So I want to know what you have to say about that and what you would do.
Yeah, I think, and this goes back to a point that was made earlier. Sometimes when you are in a position of leadership, you run away from conflict, even though you should run towards it. You run for cover, right? You don't want to get caught up in whatever the mix-up is. You don't want to make yourself vulnerable to whatever the tensions are. You'd rather just hold yourself up in a situation and just kind of skirt, responsibility. But the reality is, if you really want to be a leader, right? If you really want to project a certain set of values and dictate a certain energy, you have to be present. So when things are happening that are unsettling and that are creating an environment that makes people not want to engage, right? And you can see this coming, or you feel like it might happen. You have a responsibility as the governor, as the leader, to get out in front of it, right? Or if something does go wrong or go awry in a way you didn't expect, you have a responsibility to then go to that place and figure out how to reassure the students, figure out how to connect with those folks in a way that allows them to understand we still want this level of engagement. We still want you to feel comfortable expressing yourself. I think that desire to always put yourself in the middle of the chaos, if you will, right? That's not easy to do because, well, I think it's obvious why it's not easy to do. But if you want to be a leader in this moment, particularly when you have so much divisiveness and so much conflict, you got to be willing to put yourself in those positions and be decisive about what it is you think should happen. You're not going to make everybody happy. Not everybody's going to be thrilled with what your point of view is. But I think, as I've learned, when you are clear about what you believe, that is all that really matters. And people have the responsibility to judge for themselves where they stand. So the short answer is I would have showed up. I would have followed up. I would have engaged with your students. And I would have made sure to reassure them that to the extent that there was a mishandling of the situation and in a way that was inappropriate, we're not going to allow that to happen again. We're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. And we're going to ensure that you feel comfortable speaking your mind.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Alex Lewinauer.
Philosophy.
I'm the co-president of Democracy Matters at Vassar. And at Vassar, I'm currently in a prison studies course where I've gotten the pleasure to speak to currently incarcerated people in New York State prisons directly. And by speaking with them, I've seen firsthand how warm, caring, compassionate, intelligent, aspirational they all are. But they are, instead of letting them grow and contribute all of their many talents to society, they are locked away in state-sanctioned cages for decades at a time for crimes that they mostly committed when they were teenagers. And one of them was indicted under the felony murder law. So they're doing 25 to life for a murder that they never committed. And just before this, you and I were talking about your commitment to the Rawlsian notion of justice as fairness. This is neither just nor fair. So I have two questions for you. I ask that you answer them as specifically as possible. First, what will you do to end mass incarceration in New York and to invest in communities rather than prisons? And two, can you commit to granting clemency to New York State prisoners more than Kathy Hochul has?
So on the second question, I'll be very clear. Yes, I will commit to using the power of clemency a lot more than the current governor. And on the second question, I want to be clear how personal this is to me. I grew up, as I noted earlier, I grew up in a rough neighborhood early on in life during the war on drugs, during the crack epidemic in the 80s. A lot of my cousins, friends, either lost their lives or were in prison. And the way in which the law has functioned to, criminalize poverty and criminalize sustained generational pain without ever really trying to figure out how to stop it, how to get in front of it, it breaks my heart on a very deep and personal level. When I was in law school, I did a lot of work around the school to prison pipeline as part of my clinical. So I got a firsthand look at the way in which our kids, now that I have 12-year-old boys, I see it, they're looked at as children, they're looked at as literally adults and just fed into the prison pipeline if they happen to get into a fight or do something that any kid might do in any other environment, but it happens to be in this environment, and so it gets treated like a crime. That type of thing shouldn't be permitted. When I was a lawyer at the corporate law firm, a lot of my pro bono work was with juvenile lifers before the Supreme Court finally decided that the idea of a juvenile lifer, meaning you have no chance of parole, meaning you are locked in to jail for life for a crime that you may have committed as a juvenile, and in some cases, felony murder, where you were lured into an alley in some cases, my client was, by a bully and a drug dealer in the community and forced to lure somebody else in, and then that person was murdered, and now you're convicted as a 16-year-old for felony murder, and they're serving life without parole. Thankfully, they had to overturn the cruelty of that mode of punishment. All that to say, yes, we have to have parole reform. And I support the idea that we cannot allow the nature of the crime to be the only thing we look at when it comes to parole. The nature of the crime never changes. The nature of a crime is the nature of a crime. What changes is the nature of a person. How does that person change? Has their nature changed? Have they grown? Have they been rehabilitated? But if the law says you can only look at the nature of the crime, you literally cannot look beyond the crime. We need to change that. There's second look legislation as well. If somebody has done their time, good behavior, invested in their education, invested in work programs, work study programs, we should be willing to reward that, especially if they've been in, as you put it, for decades at a time. If you're a senior who served 30, 25, 30 years, or 65, 70 years old, why do you still be inside? So yes, there's legislation that I would support. And the other piece that I would point out is the way you deal with mass incarceration is look at the communities that don't have crime. Do they have more police or do they have more resources? They have more resources. That's what helps. You have a reduction in crime where those communities actually have resources invested in them. You have more crime where those communities don't. You want to end mass incarceration in part, you better start investing in communities and make them whole. So, just a few ideas.
Hi, my name is Roxana Harris. I'm the other co-president at Vassar College of Democracy Matters. And I want to ask you about regarding Trump's kind of efforts to overhaul and restrict just academia in general. We recently had a teach-in where we invited a former West Point professor to kind of tell us about his experience and why he resigned. And honestly, his account was frightening. He talked about how Trump completely restricted the curriculum, restricted his studies, restricted just what he saw as his future and the future for many students at West Point. And another example is that the debate team at West Point literally had to take a vow to not talk about certain topics that would come up in their debate tournaments. And I guess my question to you is, how are you going to fight against this kind of incredibly restrictive initiative that the Trump administration is taking, and honestly, this attack on academia in general?
So I think this is an important question because I think sometimes when it's ever asked, it's a question that I think begs the larger question, which is, yes, those of us in power, whether it's a governor, whether it's the members of Congress, we have a responsibility to lead in this moment. But this also reflects the role of civic institutions, and whether that's our college campuses and academia, whether that's law firms, there's power in these civic institutions that are meant to sustain and maintain our democracy. And when I see academia, when I see presidents of universities fold, when I see law firms that have a rich history of protecting and defending democracy fold, what I begin to worry about is, where's our collective sense of responsibility culturally? because now the civic institutions, the institutions separate and apart from pure government, are also crumbling in the face. And the question is why? And I would argue that a lot of it is driven by money. I think that money has so much corrupted our civic sensibilities that the things that are meant to be the bedrock anchors for society to sustain us have been corrupted. And so it's not just about me as a leader. It's about everybody in this room. It's about everybody holding their leaders, whether it's on college campuses, whether it's inside of a law firm, wherever you are, telling the folks who are there to help you learn, are there to be responsible for you to be better and to demand more. If you're at a college campus and that campus has alumni network, they have an endowment, figure out who are the folks that are giving to that endowment. Figure out how to leverage those folks to put more pressure on the folks in power in academia, right? You have power too that you need to be leveraging and activating in this moment, because there's only so much, for being honest, right? There's only so much that I can do, right? Or any one individual can do. Because if not all the schools stick together, just one or two fold, or just one or two law firms fold, then it becomes a domino effect, right? And so we need everybody to hold their respective institution accountable. So I'm with you, and I'm gonna show up when you do that, and I'm gonna make sure that we fund our schools and give them the support that they need, and our students the support that you need. But I also would just encourage you to think about what you can do in your own right on these campuses to hold those who are in power more responsible, to make sure they stay in line. Yep.
Thank you guys so much for, just sitting through and listening to our great Lieutenant Governor. For those of you that are on the line, I just wanted to make a very short, quick announcement. If you could keep your questions sweet and short. I know that we want to take pictures and all of those things, and so I want to make sure that everyone has enough time to do so. Just that, keep that mindful. Yeah, thank you guys.
They've been pretty good, I thought.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
No?
Hello, my name
How's it
is
going?
Victor Flores. I am the President Emeritus of the Harvard College Democrats and now Harlemite. My question for you is, how do you respond to concerns that you haven't been sufficiently stepping up in your role as Lieutenant Governor? For example, one of the main responsibilities of the role of Lieutenant Governor is to be President of the Senate. It's been reported that between the months of May 2022 and February 2025, that you only had one personal meeting with senators every 31 days. How can we trust that you are going to be the strongest fighter amidst the fact that we're existing under a Trump administration?
All right, so yeah, I would say a couple of things. One, being a lieutenant governor is a lot of things. Under the Constitution of the state, I am the president of the Senate. It is, in many respects, a ceremonial role. Historically, you can look back. How often you actually preside over the Senate is kind of arbitrary. Some do it a lot, depending if they actually were members of the Senate. So, for example, Brian Benjamin was a former state senator. He had a lot of relationships inside the Senate. That was part of his role to engage with that Senate. He spent a lot of time presiding over the Senate. For me, in my role and where I came from, out of Congress, 18 bills signed into laws, legislature, 10 under Trump, 8 under Biden, figuring out how to bring accountability from state government all across the state, particularly in upstate, rural communities I've represented, being able to build downstate, all the things that I worked on, specifically when it came to empowering our young people. One of the things that I'm most proud of as Lieutenant Governor was standing up the Office of Service and Civic Engagement. It was the first office the state has ever had. We brought in a chief service officer. We created we created a Empire Service Grant Program that allowed folks at every single SUNY campus to get paid service opportunities. Again, thinking about how to create civic engagement with our young people and do so in a way where we put value on service and not just make it a volunteer thing, but actually a real thing. I probably logged over 1,000 some odd miles all across this state, have done God knows how many events, hit every single county in the state. So I would put my record in terms of the level of engagement that I've had up against anybody. Now, I will point out, and it's important to note, that my ability to get around the state, my ability to be as engaged, as active, has been undermined, right? The governor after I said that I was not going to run for re-election, not challenge her, just not run for re-election, decided to leverage her power as the governor of New York to limit my capacity as an independently elected official. For those who don't know, in New York, the lieutenant governor runs separate and apart from the governor in a primary before you run on the ticket in the general. So the people gave me this power, not the governor. I was independently elected. So it is a little bit unnerving and I think quite problematic when, in pursuit of political retribution, the governor saw fit to strip away certain offices from me, to literally limit the vast majority of my staff, and to basically make it more challenging for me to move around the state and serve as lieutenant governor of the state. She stripped power, not from me, but from the people, as I am an independent actor put in this position by the people.
Hello, good evening. My name is Aaron George. I am a representative of the New York City Youth Agenda and a co-chair of the Mental Health Policy Group. And some questions I have for you, you talked a lot about affordable housing, affordable healthcare, stuff like that. You also do a lot of sustainability though with that, right? Allowing the things that you want to pass, right, to actually sustain and be accessible to a lot of New Yorkers. So my question is, on that, how are you going to be able to sustain that? And then also with the youth, how are you going to allow, damn, I'm forgetting the question.
You got the first one down.
And oh yeah, how are you going to keep like the youth voice alive, right? When you're in office, how are you going to make sure that we're heard?
Yeah, that's a great point. So the sustainability piece, what I'm hearing you ask, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, how do you maintain, what do you mean sustainability in the sense of the economics? Do you mean it in the sense of climate? How are you using sustainability? Just so, both, okay. So first of all, this goes back to the resources that we have. We are resource rich here in New York. We have the capacity. A lot of times we give money away to folks that we don't need to give money away. We give $11 billion a year away to businesses, select big businesses, oftentimes outside of the state, to try to draw and try to spur economic development. And study after study shows that there's no return on investment. We never actually get what we think we're supposed to get in those situations. So we could be looking at that pot of money, that $11 billion that we have every single year to sustain ourselves over time and make sure that we're investing. And by the way, when you invest, right, in things that have a return on investment, it actually grows the value proposition for everybody. So it's more capable of sustaining itself as a result. If you have young people that are actually properly educated, by the time they become young adults, they're productive members of society. They can earn good wages. They can give the wages back to small businesses, right? It sustains itself over time when you invest from the ground up, both in terms of economics, and certainly if you invest in green energy and green technology, you create good paying jobs along the same time. So if you build a new housing, make it climate smart, right? Do so in a way that enables that building to sustain itself over time, weatherization, all of that, all good paying jobs. What's your second question?
About keeping the youth voice alive.
Oh, yes, the youth voice. Doing this, being present. Like, I feel like it is very important for leaders to stay connected in real ways, like in human ways, to young people, and to bring young people into government, to make sure that when we talk about internships or fellowships or even a youth task force within the body of government, how do we do so in a way that empowers young people, right? We shouldn't have older people sitting in seats that are meant to represent young people, right? And so it's being very intentional and very direct with the younger folks and being very present in those spaces to make sure that I'm informed by the needs and by the concerns of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How's it going? I'm
Good,
Leo.
man.
I'm a lifelong New Yorker.
All right.
I go to NYU now. I grew up in Westchester. I'm just curious. New York has always been ranked one of the highest, if not the highest, most corrupt states in the country. And that's always just sort of fascinated me. Like, we're a pretty civically active state. So I'm curious why you think that is and what you're going to do about it.
Well, they say that money is the root of all evil, right? Right. And there's a lot of money moving around New York. There's a lot of money, a lot. We are the financial capital of the world, right? So if you start from the place that we are the seat of capital, right here in New York, we are prone to corruption as a result. And power, much to the chagrin of a lot of folks who are already in power, it is not self-legitimating. You know, people want to convince you, well, because I have power, therefore I should be able to keep power. That's why we shouldn't have primaries. You shouldn't challenge anybody because I deserve power. I have it. I should be able to keep it. No, the people gave it to you. There's a primary, so that therefore you're held to account, and that power doesn't corrupt you along the way. That's why we should have term limits, and that's why we have primaries, to make sure that power doesn't keep corrupting. But when you mix power with money, that's a very, very toxic recipe. And here in New York, we have a lot of folks with long-standing power and a lot of money to influence that power. The only way to really beat that back, well, there's a number of ways, but one of the ways we can beat that back is to put forward candidates that don't take certain types of money. So for example, I've never taken corporate PAC money ever since I ran for Congress back in 2018. And the beautiful thing about what New York is doing in this moment is we have something called public matching campaigns. So for the first time, a statewide candidate, yours truly, is looking to become a candidate that qualifies for public matching dollars. That makes it easier for me to keep doing what I've been doing, which is not take corporate PAC money and not become beholden to entrenched economic interests. The public matching campaign is simple. Any contribution between $5 and $250 gets matched 6 to 1. So a $5 contribution becomes a $35 contribution. That's a game changer. And if you hit two thresholds, 5,000 New York residents and $500,000 raised within that range of money, you unlock $3.5 million of public dollars, the people's money, not corporate money, not special interest money, people. Why is that so important? Not only because it allows folks who don't want to take certain kinds of money to run and be valuable. Now, imagine if you actually have somebody who wins for the first time with public matching dollars. Imagine what that does on the inside. Now you have somebody on the inside who's not beholden, right? Not beholden to the corporate interests that push that individual forward. And that is a liberating thing. It's not going to be without challenge. You're going to have folks who are going to come at you regardless, misinformation campaigns, all the above. But that liberates the candidate and it liberates the elected official to only fight for the people. And I think that is one way we could begin to beat back the way in which money has corrupted our system.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on.
Hi, I'm Griffin. I'm a student at NYU. Something that I think really allowed Mamdani's campaign to resonate with so many working people, young people, people disillusioned with the political process was that he presented his policies in a way that was very specific and memorable and compelling. So my question for you is, how do you plan on taking inspiration from that, or in your own way, how do you plan on connecting with voters in a way that lets them see you as the candidate for actual change?
Simplicity is definitely important because we're living in a time where there's so much coming at us, there's so much information, you know, you got a lot to retain, and people want and are owed to a direct, clear set of prescriptions. Ideally, you got 3, right, that people can just hold on to and repeat. And I tried to give you a little bit of that when I spoke at the top, right? When you talk about housing, you talk about healthcare, wages. With housing, it's truly affordable housing, a public developer to support and invest in all housing. When it's healthcare, it's universal, a single payer system, no premiums, no deductibles, no co-pays. It's pretty straightforward. And we're talking about minimum wage, a living wage for all, $30 by 2030. If you go home tonight and you have those 3 things in your head, I've done my job, right? Because at the end of the day, those are the 3 things that we're going to focus on. Everything else matters too. Immigration, climate, protecting our democracy, all these things matter. But healthcare, housing, and wages, a living wage for all, 30 by 30, single payer, universal healthcare, and housing that is truly affordable for everyone. Those are the things that we're going to fight for. Those are the things that we're gonna make sure we drill every single place I go. Yes.
Hi, two quick questions.
Nope.
Testing,
No mic.
testing.
Oh, got it?
Testing,
There
testing.
you go.
Yeah, hi. Specifically, would you be willing to pledge not to receive any funding from APAC? And secondly, I am curious about how you go from being the underdog to the favorite. Like, what exactly is the plan to make that happen? Like mentioning Mamdani, I'm also curious about how you're going to try to like replicate his success. Like, I think social media was a big part of that. He's really charismatic and viral and polished on there. So I don't know if that's like one of your plans. Thank you.
So to the first question, yes. And to the second question, I would say there is the thing about Mamdani's success, and I think it's important to make this point for folks to understand. He's putting immense pressure on the system. You know, he's not somebody that the establishment wanted. He's not somebody that the powers that be wanted. So, you know, there's a real opportunity here to push an agenda forward. And when you say, how am I going to find success? I think part of it is making sure that we continue to demonstrate to folks that in me, there's a willing partner to work alongside somebody who brings that kind of energy to the table, not somebody who's just going to pretend to get along so long as it's politically expedient. But the moment a real choice comes down to the table, like tax the rich or like supporting free buses, you know where to be found, right? There's a difference between a photo shoot eating buffalo wings with Mamdani, as the governor did, and actually showing up and doing the work and being the moment. So look out for when that budget season starts and the governor talks about her plan, and ask yourself, how does it align with Zoran's agenda? And I think part of what we're doing when it comes to my issues, from healthcare to housing to living wage to taxing the rich, what we're speaking to is an agenda that grows the affordability perspective here in a way that is not just city-centric, but statewide. And I think over time, yes, on social media, yes, on TikTok, yes, on Twitter, all of the social media platforms, all the podcasts, all the radio spots, all the print publications, and yes, building a ground-based organizational support. We've got Citizen Action that's already endorsed. We got NYCC, thank you, sir. We got NYCC that's already endorsed. We got 2 Climate, Food and Water, Third Act, they've already endorsed. We will continue to build an organizational capacity on the ground that is a clear alternative to somebody who's only there to protect the status quo.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Stephen Birchall. I'm with the St. Lawrence University Democrats. I am the vice president. I think it's pretty clear from a lot of the questions brought up tonight that there is a real concern in New York about policing and police conduct, especially regarding college campuses and policing neighborhoods. As you said yourself, you believe that the solution to mass incarceration isn't less police, but rather greater resources. So as governor, how do you plan to address the concerns of citizens regarding policing and police operations?
So I think on the policing question, right, it's important. I think that policing in and of itself is not a bad thing. You know, I grew up with folks who were police officers in my family. You know, there is a role for law enforcement. And it's a very, very dangerous profession. And it's a profession that should be treated like the profession that it is, a serious profession that requires great knowledge and expertise and courage in many respects. What happens is when we have a system that devalues life in certain spaces and doesn't put investment in certain communities and then criminalizes those communities because of their economic conditions, and then puts law enforcement in those spaces, a space that is already corrupt by design, okay? It then puts those police officers in a position where they become, in many respects, the protectors of that oppressive dynamic. Oftentimes not by their choice, but by the fact that they just happen to decide to be police officers. And so we have a responsibility to make sure that we actually invest in those communities in real ways, and do so in a fashion that treats the policing aspect of that as a partnership in that, where you actually build bridges and where you have community-based policing, and not one that is meant to just sort of keep under restriction or to control a neighborhood. You know, we have neighborhoods where it's basically like outdoor prisons. Let's be honest. You know, you got public housing units with cameras everywhere, and these are kids growing up in these environments across generations. We don't even bat an eye on that. And so if you're already basically growing up in an open air prison, you've already been criminalized. And so when you have police in those environments, the relationship automatically becomes potentially tense. Unless you do have folks who happen to be in uniform who come from that community and maybe understand the dynamics on the ground, which is also very, very important. I think Mamdani's point too about how we use policing is important, because there's a lot of mental health dynamics out there, a lot of social service dynamics that are out there. So making sure that we have a comprehensive approach that doesn't put undue pressure and strain on the officer to go take care of every single situation that might not be in his or her purview is also very important, including mental health crises, where there might not be the right appropriate role for that individual, right? So having a more comprehensive approach across the board, putting value on policing, but also putting value on the communities that are being policed is just as important in this work. That would be how I would look at it. It's a more comprehensive community-based approach that doesn't devalue policing, but make sure we value the communities that are being policed.
Excellent, thank you.
Good evening, Lieutenant Governor.
Good evening.
My question has to do with why you're running. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You are Kathy Hochul's Lieutenant Governor. And if anybody who's in this room today is sitting here, nobody's satisfied with her as the governor. What was your personal turning point in deciding your run for governor? And why do you choose to challenge your boss in this particular moment?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that question. So I was very excited. And I'm trying not to make this a long answer, but when I was in Congress, I was serving my second term. I was in the middle of my second term. I had just won re-election by 12 points. I outperformed Biden by 10 points. I won in counties that Trump won. Literally, I won Sullivan County. I won Otsego County. These are counties Trump won. The idea that I would continue to serve my district and be in that position was very encouraging to me. I felt very comfortable. But I was also a father and a husband. And I wanted to be home. And I talked to my wife and I said, you know, I'll probably do 3 terms max in the House. I'll run for one more re-election, I'll come home. And she was in agreement with that. And in the middle of us having this conversation, an opportunity presented itself, because the prior lieutenant governor, a month and a half before the primary election in 2022, got alleged with some type of corruption, and he had to step down. There were already 2 other lieutenant governor candidates that were running and have been running for over a year. We were only a month and a half out from the primary election. The governor now was in a tough spot. The governor had to figure out if she was going to be okay with 2 individuals that she had no real relationship with winning and then having to run on a ticket with them in the general, or try to figure out this somebody she could appoint to not just be the lieutenant governor, but run a campaign, run their own campaign, leverage their own resources, and build their own vision for the state so that they can win that primary in a month and a half's time, and then run on the same ticket. Well, that ended up being me. I wanted to come home. I wanted to serve the state that I love, that raised me, that raised my wife. I love the state, to be in the executive, to serve with the first woman governor of the state. All of it was exciting and compelling for me. It felt like God was giving me an off-ramp to come back home and still serve. Now, I had a sense of my own value, though. And when I sat down with the governor, I said, Governor, I'm not a normal pick. I'm a sitting member of Congress. The last time a sitting member of Congress became lieutenant governor was over 40 years ago. We had to have a real partnership here. And I need to be a part of the decision-making process. And unfortunately, despite those promises that were made by her to me, that I would be not a typical sort of marginalized lieutenant governor, but actually in the room, making the decisions, it never materialized. But I want to be clear, that's not why I'm running. Why I'm running is I realized that the reason why it never materialized wasn't personal. Because I started to see how she made decisions in the housing space, in the education space, in the healthcare space, in any number of spaces. And I realized that if you don't have a vision to pull people into, to connect people to, then those people don't have the ability to be any value to you. They can't be plugged into something that's pushing the folks forward. And I realized that here we have a governor in New York who, based on my front row seat, seems to be more reactive to the political environment than she is driven by some internal vision or mission to improve the state. And you can see that in a lot of the waffling of the decision-making that occurs over time. And you saw this also in the presidential race with Biden, where I thought it was pretty obvious that Biden should step down. And I said he should step down. But the governor chose, in my mind, to not say what I thought was the truth. I did not make a political calculation when I said that. I made that based on a moral decision. A lot of folks in the political world didn't want me to say what I said. But I said it because I believed it. The governor, I believe, made a politically calculated decision for her own benefit, not for the benefit of New Yorkers or for the country. The same thing happened with Mayor Adams, where Mayor Adams became compromised by President Trump. And I felt compelled in that moment to say Mayor Adams should resign. The governor did not. Again, I would argue for political reasons, not because she thought it was the right or wrong thing to do. And I'm tired of it. And I got really fed up once it became clear that New York was being left behind as a result. We saw the biggest swing from left to right here in New York in 2024. People are fed up. They don't believe in their leadership anymore. They don't believe that anybody gives a damn about them or actually cares about the courage of their convictions. And so I felt that I have a responsibility, if I actually have some convictions, if I actually do have a vision in this moment, and I do believe New York deserves better, that we should step up, that I should step up and run. And yes, it's not easy. The easiest thing in the world to do, just to be clear in this moment, is just do nothing. Fall in line. Shut up and wait my turn, if I'm being honest, right? The thing that takes real courage in my mind is to do what you believe is right, even if it might not go your way. And we need that kind of mentality in politics today, because that's the only thing that'll actually stop somebody like Trump. Because Trump can give a damn about Republicans or Democrats. He's not a political animal, he's just an animal. He's a chaos agent. And the only way you stop that is with a moral conviction. You can't stop that just being a typical politician who's always testing which way the wind is gonna blow. That's not how he rolls. So you can't beat that kind of energy with the typical political energy. You need a different kind of energy. And that's what I'm hoping to bring.
Thank you. You brought my own tonight.
Hello, my name
Hello.
is hi. My name is Wyatt Feast. I'm a student here at NYU, and I also grew up in Westchester. And my question to you is about anti-Semitism in New York. So, as I'm sure you're aware, New York has the largest share of Jewish residents out of any state in the country. And yet last year, Jewish hate crimes made up for more than 50% of all hate crimes in New York City. And that number has only gone up in 2025. So my question to you is how, if you were to become governor, how would you work to combat anti-Semitism across the state? And how can you work to assure New Yorkers, Jewish New Yorkers, that they can feel safe, that they could practice their religion without fear of persecution, that Jewish children can show up to school without the possibility of a swastika being graffitied on that school, like we saw one day after Zoran's election?
Yes, it's a very important question. And I'm gonna tell you on a personal level, I am married to a Black and Jewish woman. And our children, who are 12, are gonna be bar mitzvahed next year. All right. So I see a lot of this through their eyes as they're learning Hebrew, and and I'm not Jewish, obviously, but I'm seeing the things that the lives that I cherish the most in the world, own their Judaism, own their sense of identity. And I look at that and I say to myself and their friends who they hang out with and play with, go to synagogue with, I see it all through their lens. And like you, I worry about the rise of anti-Semitism. I worry about the chilling effect that it is having on expression and religious expression. It is a cornerstone of American life that we be able to be who we are, to express who we are, to believe what we believe. And to live at a time where we have seen, as you put it, in a spike in anti-Semitism. It is incumbent upon leaders to make sure that we name those things, that we denounce those things when they happen, that we make it clear to people that when we have disagreements with communities or when we feel at odds with different dynamics that might be even happening around the world, the notion that that results in hatred towards somebody or the notion that results in dehumanizing somebody is something that we always have to protect against. And it's incumbent upon us as leaders to never leverage that against any community. And that's what ends up happening, by the way. Leaders decide, or I would argue demagogues, decide to leverage these dynamics for their own purposes as opposed to really trying to build bridges. When I was before the governor stripped away some of my priorities, going back to the gentleman's question about, my role, one of the things that I used to do as lieutenant governor was be the chair of the Hate and Bias Prevention Unit. This was a unit that was set up regional hate and bias prevention councils all across the state. And you'd have folks from every single affinity group, Hispanics, the Muslim community, LGBTQ+, Jewish community, everybody from different spaces, right? Disability community would come together and talk about ways to educate and proactively inform and get out in front of hate in their communities and or rapidly respond to scenarios in their communities and make it easy for folks to report to the state hate crimes or bias activity that undermine communities. The state needs to continue to grow these councils and create real lines of communication to these councils and have rapid response teams when these things happen across community. And certainly, as you point out, with anti-Semitism. So I'm with you on both a personal level, I understand where you're coming from, and I would argue that at the professional level, as a public servant, I am dedicated to doing everything we can to beat back hate of all kinds.
Thank you.
We're good?
Wrap up, yeah.
We're good?
Close us out.
Close us out? How we feeling? I appreciate you all. I mean, honestly, it means a lot that you're here. It means a lot that you stayed through the whole process, that you engaged. I just hope you walked away from this knowing how much I care about this work, that I care about you. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I know that you are deserving of leaders that actually want to better your lives, not leaders who just want to take from you and run away with the power. And I want you to know that you're looking at somebody who's dedicated to that. I really believe that we can do this. And I really believe that if we get it done, we can really make change. We can really do something here in New York that's going to lift up everybody, that's going to restore hope, that's going to make sure people believe again that anything is possible with their life, you're not trapped by your circumstance. And you, by being here, I kid you not, you are so invigorating for me because you make me understand and believe how important the work is. And you make me understand and appreciate that there's still folks out there who really do care and who really want to put the work in. So I'm with you. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you all for coming out. And I love every single one of you. God bless.